There have been a lot of questions then surrounding EFF leader Julius Malema's visit to former President Jacob Zuma's Nkandla homestead. While speculation is rife, none of them have yet spilled the tea, if you will, on what happened. Malema, once one of Zuma's fiercest critics, tweeted the former president asking to meet. Best believe it then that happened on Friday. We all saw the pictures of the meeting, setting social media abuzz. The invitation came at a time when Jacob Zuma is at a crossroads with the Zondo Commission. Let's talk further about this. Bring in political analyst Aubrey Matshiqi. Koko Matshiqi, very good evening to you. Always good to speak to you. So it's been days of speculation, as I was saying. What is your reading of what we are dealing with here?
In the first place, I don't think there's any tea to spill, because what I think happened is that former President Jacob Zuma was very polite. He did serve tea, but I suspect he also served eggs and then gave them face cloths so that at the end of the meeting, because it did not go the way they had anticipated, they would be able to wipe the egg off their faces.
What do you make then of, it was the Sunday Times reporting today that while it appears to have been a spontaneous request by Julius Malema on Twitter, which then got a response from the former president, some are saying, in fact, talks building up to the meeting were taking place days, if not weeks ahead, offline?
Well, it's still not clear whether the meeting was requested by Mr. Malema or it was requested by the former president. Be that as it may, you must look at the motives behind the meeting from the perspectives of the two men. First of all, if you look at it from the perspective of Mr. Malema, it's very clear that he is trying to position himself as an elder statesman who will unlock this deadlock between the Commission and Mr. Zuma by delivering Mr. Zuma to the Commission. But secondly, I think Mr. Malema either fancies himself or in reality remains influential inside the structures of the ANC. And hence the need to tag members of the so-called RET faction of the ANC, thereby communicating quite clearly that he is speaking to the former president, not to the current president and his faction. And if you look far ahead, there's also the possibility that with the battles that are coming at the NGC, the national conference in 2022, and therefore the general election in 2024, Mr. Malema may be looking at outcomes of those battles that favor him, and outcomes he will be able to influence, and out of which outcomes alliances and coalitions may be formed, depending on what happens in the election, firstly in 2021, secondly in 2024. If you look at it from the perspective of Mr. Zuma, this is an opportunity for him to widen his network of support, to include support from the EFF and its supporters.
And I'm glad you mentioned the current president of the ANC, because if some of the reporting that we've seen today in the papers is to be believed, as you say, much of the strategy may play to ANC factional battles. The idea here is that it would also put the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, in a corner and have him implicated further in alleged dodgy deals that are said to have been taking place during his time as Zuma's deputy president. But Ramaphosa has already been implicated just recently by the former ESCOM boss, Brian Molemfe, and you wonder if Ramaphosa was ever going to come out of the state capture inquiry process unscathed to begin with.
Well, he may come out of it unscathed if evidence of impropriety against him cannot be produced or accused by those who are making the allegations. But as I have said elsewhere, we need to be fair to the current president, because during the 9 years or 9 wasted years of ANC misrule, the current president was in a coma.
And just expand on that. When you say he was in a coma, how was that ever going to sell?
Well, I'm glad you're using the word sell, because I was about to say we have been sold the lie at times by some sections of the media that somehow the current president knew nothing about what was going on during the 9 years of ANC misrule. Hence, it has been mischaracterized as the 9 wasted years of Jacob Zuma. But because this is a lie, depending on what happens in the commission and outside the commission, this lie may be proved to be just that, a lie.
And I want to talk about the ANC factual issues. For example, you mentioned how influential Julius Malema, who was kicked out of the party almost a decade ago, if not 10 years this year, is still so influential. What does that tell us about the governing party itself?
Well, what I'm saying is that he either fancies himself to be influential or may in reality be influential. What I'm certain of is that he is privy to information about the factional dynamic and how it is evolving in the ruling party, and we may be looking for opportunities to influence the direction of that factional dynamic to the advantage of the EFF and to his own advantage. But whether in reality he is really influential, given the current state of the ruling party, a party that is split in the middle, remains to be seen.
And the DA, of course, has jumped in today. They are exploring another angle. They're calling for Parliament to look into whether there was any abuse of the declaration processes about the benefits of members and gifting processes in that extravagant helicopter ride trip that many have questioned to date. Do you think that's going to snowball into a bigger thing, or is it a storm in a teacup, if you will?
Well, I think what the DA is trying to plant is the idea that there was some relationship which is untoward, which through which the helicopter and other resources were made available to Mr. Malema and his delegation. I think they're trying to attach this to other allegations that have been made before about the sources of funding for the EFF. But on the other hand, it could also be a case of sour grapes, given the fact that they were not invited to high tea.
Let's leave it there then. Aubrey Matshiqi, let's leave you to go make yourself a sweet cup of tea tonight.